Hi, I'm Peter Cavan, and thank you for joining me for this third and final part of this little mini internet sermon devotional series called The Appearances, thinking about the different appearances of Jesus Christ as recorded historically in the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Well, just a small recap. On our first day, we thought about the appearance as described by Mark and Matthew, where Jesus primarily appears to his disciples in Galilee. And we thought about how that meant a journey home for those young men, that Jesus, as the risen Jesus, wants to speak to us, appear to us, bless us, instruct us in our home, which is good news for lockdown, isn't it? And social isolation. And then yesterday we looked at Luke's gospel, where Jesus appears to a couple while they're on their walk. In their case, 7 miles. I don't always do 7 miles. But he appeared to them there and he spoke to them, and they went from being depressed and downcast to having their hearts burning within them and wanting him to come into their home. And we were talking yesterday about how we can experience the risen Lord throughout this whole corona crisis, while we're out walking and while we're out doing our daily exercise, inviting him to come and speak to us. What an opportunity it is, I guess for him, but much more for us, to have our hearts set on fire again. Which brings us finally to John's Gospel. Now, in John's Gospel, it is made absolutely explicit that the disciples are afraid, because it says that they had locked themselves in to their home, or to the place where they were staying. I guess it wouldn't have been their actual home because they were visitors to Jerusalem, but wherever they were locked in. They were on lockdown. That's a good title for this part. Part 3, John's Gospel, Lockdown. It says because of the religious leaders, and of course it's not surprising, their rabbi, if you like, had just been executed. There's no reason to think that they weren't next. And indeed, in the Acts of the Apostles, they are brought in for questioning, and so their fears were very, very real. And yet, while they were locked away in fear in their homes, and that's sometimes how I feel today, maybe some of you as well, that we're kind of locked away in fear, that it's scary to go out. It might even cost us our life to go out, and if not my life, maybe someone else's life, because of passing on. So there are some parallels. And in that scenario, think of those guys afraid, inside, not able to meet publicly for worship, not at that time. It says this: on that first day, Jesus appeared among them. Despite the fact that they were on lockdown and they couldn't really feel that they could get out to get to him, he came to them. Friend, he came to where they were. That's always what God has done. Throughout the whole of Bible history, he hasn't been the kind of God that waits for us to come to him, or waits for us to devise methods to get to him. He's always been the God who has come down to us. And in the Easter story, when they're locked away, does he walk through the wall? I don't know. But he appears before them, not troubled by the locked door. How did that happen? Answers on a postcard. I don't know, but it did. And what a wonderful thought for Easter. I know a place I'd love to be today would be to be in church. I'd love to have the joy of worshipping with others live in a room. I'd love the thought of having fellowship with people. I'd love the thought of getting out and about, and for many people being with their family or seeing old friends or enjoying this wonderful weekend. We can't do that. We shouldn't do that. Don't do that. But what we find is this, that Jesus didn't need an organized gathering to encounter his people. He came to them. And when he came to them, they were filled with joy. When he came to them inside their property, he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. Maybe it's time, and I know I'm not saying anything new. I know you know this already, but let's just remind ourselves. It's time to remember that when we go to church, we're supposed to bring God with us. He's supposed to always be in our homes. The corporate gathering on a Sunday or during the week or in cells or small groups, whenever it is part of the church, but it's not the only thing. It's not the only drink of living water that we're supposed to have. It's not the only heavenly bread that we're supposed to eat. And so maybe God can teach us or remind us something wonderful during this lockdown, that when we can't get to him, he can still get to us. And today, let's believe, and you open up your heart to the Spirit of God. Say, Lord, I can't be in church. I'd love to be there with all that music and joy and coffee and friends and hearing the word preached. I'd love that. But Lord, will you, as you did in John's Gospel, chapter 20, will you come into my home and minister to me? It says he also showed them his wounds. Today, even though Good Friday was a couple of days ago, actually we still have a scarred Lord. In the book of Revelation it says he is the lamb looking as though it had been slain. In all of the perfection of the age to come, when we all have glorified bodies in the future, when we're all gathered around him in the book of Revelation, we're all perfected. We'll all look amazing. Everyone except one. Only one will have scars. Only one will have wounds on his hands and feet, maybe his side. Jesus Christ. And with this I finish. As he gathers to be with his disciples in John chapter 20, he brings them joy. He brings them the Holy Spirit. He shows them the physical signs of his affection, his passion, and that he has saved them by showing them the wounds on his body. He does one other thing. He says this to them: as the Father sent me, so I am sending you. But then something happens. They don't go just yet. And when we put all the gospel accounts together with Acts, as any good systematic theologian should, we discover that although Jesus commissions them to go, they don't actually go for a few weeks later. But when they do, boy, do they change the world. And that is how I want to finish this reflection. May the Lord come into our homes. May the Lord give us joy, give us the Holy Spirit, give us a fresh revelation of his passionate affection and his redemption of us. And may he recommission us that when this lockdown is done, that we won't be in slumber, but we will be ready to go as the Father had sent him, so Jesus will send us. And just as Jesus came out of the desert, it says in Luke's Gospel, in the power of the Spirit. I believe if we will go back to basics, if we will go back to dependency, if we will spend time in prayer with God as we walk or in our homes, as our hearts burn within us, as we experience his presence in our homes, as we receive the Holy Spirit and revelations of his passion and love and his redemption of us, then we'll be ready for the post-COVID-19 world, sent by him into every corner of the world. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you. May the Lord turn his countenance towards you, be gracious to you, and give you peace. He is risen. Why don't you invite him into your home this Easter? Bless your hearts.